Hey, this is Michael Lennon with the band Venice, and you're listening to our favorite Lennon family historian, Lisa Louise Cook, on the Genealogy Gems podcast.
Welcome to the Genealogy Gems podcast, providing quick and innovative ways to make the absolute most out of your research time and creative ideas for sharing and displaying your family history. I'm your host, Lisa Louise Cook. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Genealogy Gems podcast. That was our friend Michael Lennon at the top of the show. And as you know, I got a chance in episode 39 to talk to Pat and Kip Lennon, who are half of the band Venice, that Michael and his brother Mark, who are their cousins, are the other half. And they do that wonderful song, The Family Tree. Well, in this episode, Kip and Pat's sister, Kathy Lennon, of the famous singing group, the Lennon Sisters, will be joining us. You know how great those guys were. Well, Kathy Lennon is an absolute sweetheart and passionate about her family history. We had such a wonderful time visiting the other day on the phone that we went a bit long. So I'll be sharing part one of that interview with you today, and I'll be bringing the rest of the interview to you in the next episode. In today's episode, Kathy talks about genealogy and the Lennon family tree. And in our next episode, she'll be sharing her amazing career that she and her sisters have enjoyed, their many years on the Lawrence Welk Show, the joys and the tragedies of being in the spotlight, and a wonderful venture, kind of with a family history twist, that she's undertaken with her sister Janet. And later on, I'll be telling you about a brand new contest for Genealogy Gems Premium members. Lots going on. Oh, and speaking of contests, premium member Melissa Roberge was our winner of our Ancestor Handwriting contest. And today we're going to listen in as Paula Sassi, certified graphologist, analyzes Melissa's great-great-grandfather, Robert William Hicks's handwriting. Very interesting stuff. But first, we're off to the mailbox. I thought it would be fun to share this email that I got recently from George Nolan. George writes, "Have been away from genealogy for a year or so and decided to stick my tippy toes back in the genealogy research pool a little. So I was downloading an old favorite genealogy podcast and decided to search the podcast site for other genealogy podcasts, and then I found you. I've been listening to 3 or 4 your podcasts every weekday since then and want you to know that your podcast has induced me to jump back in the research pool way deeper than my tippy toes. Even though genealogy kills all my free time, I still want to thank you." Well, I'm sorry, George, but there's no dipping your toes in. Genealogy is like Jaws. It lurches out of the water and it grabs you. But I'm glad it did. And welcome aboard, matey, to the Genealogy Gems podcast. And there are lots of perks to listening to the show, as you will soon hear in our first gem, another look at the handwriting of our ancestors. Well, as we promised you in this episode, we're going to be bringing to you the results of the handwriting analysis of our contest winners. So on the phone with me, I've brought back Paula Sassi, certified graphologist. Hi, Paula.
Hi, Lisa. Nice to be back.
Oh, it's wonderful having you back. Boy, were you a hit with all the listeners, and everybody was very excited. There was a huge response to becoming premium members and entering the contest, and I know our winners are really excited to hear what you have to say today.
Well, I'm really enjoying seeing these, older handwritings. I love this stuff.
And we've got some pretty old ones here. We can jump right in and start with our contest winner, who was Melissa Roberge, and she has actually provided you a honey recipe by her great-great-grandfather, Robert William Hicks, and he was born in 1837. So this, I believe, was done in 1859. It's pretty old.
Yes, it was. And from what I can tell, it was probably written with a steel nib pen, which, is still kind of the quill-type pen.
Yes, and for the listeners, head to the show notes, unless you're running or in the car. But when you get a chance, listen to this while you're looking at the show notes, because I'm going to have the sample of the writing there for you, and you'll see what she's talking about. So overall, give us your overall assessment of the kind of gentleman that you think that Robert W. Hicks was.
Robert Hicks was a conventional, traditional kind of person, a pretty good basic education, would follow the rules and do things in the accepted manner. I'm noticing up at the top, too, where he writes about for making honey, the Y and G kind of pull to the left. So there's still that need for nurturing and support from family. Mm-hmm. The loops in his T shows that he was a very mentally persistent person. So when you read this recipe, it's very involved, and he would be the type of person that would stick to it, would have the patience to do something like this. And then also he had that little bit of a stubborn streak, too.
Well, good. Well, I think it'd be fun now. I'd like to play for you a recording that Melissa has put together. When she sent me the recipe, she sent me some background on Robert W. Hicks. Let me play that for you now.
Hi, Lisa. I am so happy to share a little knowledge of an ancestor and his handwritten honey recipe with you. Robert William Hicks was my great-great-grandfather. The information that I have about him comes mainly from a book of little tales that was written by my great-aunt Jenny, his granddaughter. Robert William Hicks was born in 1837 in the Piedmont region of Virginia. He was a farmer. At the age of 25, he mustered in the Confederate Army of Virginia, joining a regiment in the section of heavy artillery. Throughout the war, he kept a diary consisting of his daily life as a soldier. He served most of his time near Richmond. He was in the Battle of the Crater in Petersburg and was at Appomattox when Lee surrendered. Aunt Jenny writes that it was a very emotional time because Lee's men had the greatest admiration and respect for him. Robert William walked home from Appomattox. After the war, at the age of 30, he married Frances Ann Morris, resumed farming, and had 6 children, of which 4 grew to adulthood. In his disabled soldier pension application filed at the age of 79, Robert William wrote, "At the surrender, was honorably discharged and got my parole. I served through the entire war and was never on double duty or in the guardhouse." After his death from bronchial pneumonia at the age of 80, his wife Fanny filed for a widow's pension. She wrote, "My husband served 4 years in the Civil War and was a faithful soldier." Aunt Jenny wrote that she was very proud of him, and he taught her much about botany, trees and plants, how to stand straight and tall, and how to live, be honest and kind to everyone. Thank you, Lisa. I learned so much from your podcast and look forward to each new episode. Bye.
So interesting in how you described him as a good student, and doesn't that just jump out at you from what Melissa says?
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. And really, he was born in 1837, so he wrote this recipe when he was only 22.
Right, just before he went into the Army.
Yes.
Any other comments you wanted to make on that?
Well, you can see the shading in the writing, and that's the pen, but he does it in a very nice way. So he was very healthy at the time that he wrote this. You know, the shading, you can look at the ink as if it's the blood going through the veins. And his has the proper shading in the downstrokes and lighter in the upstrokes. So he was a pretty healthy young man.
Well, it certainly must have been to survive and walk all the way home from Appomattox.
Definitely. Isn't that amazing?
Now, in addition to Melissa, our winner, we gave out a second handwriting analysis prize to premium member Diana Larson, who took the time to go to the Genealogy Members Forum, where members can ask questions and chat about genealogy. And she wrote a great answer to my posted question, Which ancestor would you choose if you won the drawing? Well, Diana submitted a wonderful old postcard written by her maternal great-grandfather, Albert Lees, to his twin sister, Edith Eleanor Lees, in 1910. It's a particularly touching story because Albert died in an automobile accident on the way home from his job with the WPA in 1938. Well, Diana's family doesn't have many stories about Albert passed through the generations because only one of Albert's 3 daughters had children, and Albert passed away before any of Eleanor's children were born. So her mother, aunt, and uncle never got to know their grandfather. Well, premium members will be able to hear Paula's description of the man who wrote the postcard almost 100 years ago, and hopefully Diana and her mother will enjoy hearing more about the man who died so tragically. It's a fascinating analysis, so I hope you will join us for premium episode number 6.
Profile America, Tuesday, June 17th. In the past, hot summer days meant that some enterprising youngsters in the neighborhood would set up a lemonade stand at 5 cents a glass, or the family would share a pitcher of iced tea on the front porch to cool off. Today, the drink of choice is a soft drink, usually carbonated, and while the summer heat does call for more to drink, Americans have a powerful thirst all year long. As a result, we each drink about 52 gallons of soft drinks annually, up 18 gallons from 1980. The increasing popularity of bottled water has led to an even greater increase. In 1980, we each drank about 2.5 gallons of bottled water. Now that figure is over 25 gallons a year. You can find these and more facts about America from the U.S. Census Bureau online at census.gov.
There were never such devoted sisters. Never had to have a chaperone, no sir. I'm here to keep my eye on her. Caring, sharing, every little thing that we are wearing. When a certain gentleman arrived from Rome, she wore the dress and I stayed home. All kinds of weather we stick together.
I recently got a chance to have an exclusive interview with one of America's sweethearts. And let me tell you, she is a gem. You know Kathy Lennon from her more than 50 years with the Lennon Sisters, but you may not know that she is also an avid family historian. So here's part 1 of my interview with Kathy Lennon.
Well, hi, Kathy, and welcome to the show. I'm just thrilled to have a chance to talk to you.
Well, same here. Thank you, Lisa. I know we've gone back and forth for so long trying to get our schedules to work, and this is great. And, of course, my brother Pat and my brother Kip both said, oh, it's a fun interview. You know, you'll enjoy talking with Lisa. So I've been looking forward to it also.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I loved meeting your brothers, and talented group.
Aren't they? Oh, we are such fans. We're groupies. Whenever I can, I try and see them, and they are just so talented. I love what they write and their harmonies. You just can't beat that family sound. You know, you just can't. Cousins are all, there's so many of us cousins. There's, oh gosh, over close to 200 first cousins. And it's amazing that the family blend, the harmony is just there.
It really is. They're just so talented, and I know that they just took my listeners by storm. I've heard so many emails and comments saying, "Oh, we love them. Where have they been?" And of course, their family tree song just took us all by the heart.
Oh, absolutely.
It's our new theme song.
Good. It should be.
Well, you know, when talking with them, of course, I shared with them a little bit of some of the research that I had done on the Lennon family tree, and they said, oh, you got to talk to Kathy because she's the family historian in the family. So it sounds like you have that label in your family.
Well, what happened, I think, through the years, I've always been so interested in genealogy and, well, the different, what makes America America, and it's the people who come from all over the world. And I just has I've followed all the sides of our family, our personal Lennon, the Bill Lennon family, and our grandmother's side, the Alvarezes, and and there's so we have the Mexican Alvarez and Spanish, and we've got the German, which is the Heinrichs on our dad's mom's side, and then we have the Scottish is on our grandfather on our mom's side, and then we've got the Irish Lennons. So we really are kind of a typical American family if you follow back even 2 generations, and it's pretty exciting, and it's been an interest of mine forever. And anytime I hear a story, it's like, oh, well, tell me. No, wait a minute. Well, how did they get there, and what did they? And I've kind of kept things and accumulated a lot of information, and it's just a love of mine.
That's wonderful. Isn't it neat when you kind of get the word out that, hey, I'm interested in this, and all of a sudden the family starts coming out of the woodwork and sharing their stories?
Exactly. It's and being now I guess I'm about the 6th oldest of all the rest of the cousins, all the first generation cousins of the Lennons, and it's each one of them now are more interested as they get older. Like, where are you going to have that? Who has that? And that's why our cousin Greg, who has kind of picked up the ball also and done a site just for our family, that it has information that people can write in, because with our family being 200 cousins, and then you get married, and then you have children, and now we're into the 4th generation under the Lennon that have been in Venice, California. You say, oh my gosh, somebody got married. Oh, somebody had a baby. Oh, and you can write into Greg and put it in so it keeps being updated by the different families, because, I used to be so proud I knew everybody's names and ages and even their birth dates, and now it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many of us.
There really are. I can imagine what a family reunion looks like just with the first cousins.
With just the first cousins, and it's so much fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. So it sounds like you've done an awful lot of research.
Well, it was an interesting thing. I was doing an interview. Being one of the Lennon sisters, we do quite a few interviews, and through the years have just gone to every state in the Union and performed, and we're still performing today in Branson, Missouri.
Right.
We were going to go for 1 year, Lisa, and we now are going to be our 15th season this year.
Oh, my gosh.
So
they love you there.
We moved to Branson. Didn't expect that. My heart is still in Venice, California, but we're here. And through all our interviews, we got a request from someone who said they thought they were related to us. And so I said, well, let me pick up that and find out who that is. And a man called, and his name is Tim Russell. And Tim is out of St. Paul, Minnesota, and he has had a morning show, talk show, for over 20 years. And he also is in Prairie Home Companion, and he does all the voiceovers and travels with Prairie Home Companion. And, and so Tim and I did this interview, and he said, we're related. Our great-grandfathers were brothers. And I said, well, now, wait a minute. How do we know this? How does this work out? He goes, well, my great-great-grandfather, was James Lennon and married to Kathleen Ballou, and they got married and had 13 children, and one was my great-grandfather, and one of them was your great-grandfather. So we followed the line down, and it was just a great interview. And a listener for his radio show put together, she was also a genealogist, and she put together a whole book for us on where the Lennons and how it went down and who married whom, and birth dates and death notices and newspaper articles, death certificates, obituaries. I mean, some even birth certificates that they weren't 100% sure of the 1900 census. But it was phenomenal. She sent one to Tim and one to me. And so then Tim and I did a second interview after looking over the books, and we are indeed cousins. And since then, we were in St. Paul last year. We went over to the house and met his cousins So we met more Lennons. One is actually named Mary Elizabeth Lennon, and then her married name. She took that as her middle name, as one of her names. And so it's interesting. So Tim, who is, and he was also in the movie Prairie Home Companion. He played the stage manager in the movie.
Right.
And so we've been in touch, Tim Russell, and he's another one that would be a fun person for you to talk to. And he has the cane with an engraved gold top, like a knob on the top of this cane that is engraved that was our great-great-grandfather's.
Oh, my gosh.
And so we got to see that, and so we've kind of been in touch. And then he came to Branson last year at Christmas time to see us perform, he and his wife, Judy. And I got as many of us together as possible, and we had breakfast and visited, and then he came over to my house, and we sat around, and I pulled pictures of the great-great-grandparents and picked out which one was his and which one was ours. And,
right.
It was so interesting. And so between Greg and Tim Russell, but we can't believe this fan just put this together for us, we've been able to get quite a bit of history, definitely, on the Lennon family.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's amazing. I mean, isn't it wonderful? It's like if you can just get the word out, it's amazing how nice genealogists are, and they're just so willing to jump in and get involved and help. And now I think not only with the radio show that the interview that you did, but also just the internet, like you said with Greg's site, it just opens the doors wide open to make those connections.
Exactly. And there was a lot, when it came to the Lennons, we had someone come over, we did a special show, it was I guess it was in March, here in Branson, called the Branson Fest, and there was a fan that had come in from Wisconsin, and she had said that they had been there, and that they had gone to the historic site of our family home.
Right, in Appleton?
In Appleton, and it's the old 3rd Ward. They have a walking tour of Appleton's historic homes, and one being our home it's not ours, but it was our family home on South Walnut Street, and of James and Catherine,
right,
who were let me do this differently, our great-great-great-grandparents. And then they took some pictures, and they brought those for us to see. And we had visited the house many, many years ago, my sisters and I, when we were performing, and I'm talking about probably in the mid-'60s or something.
Oh, wow.
And so it's been a long time since we've been there. But they came, and then they got talking, and they realized that they felt that somehow they were related to one of those 13 Lennon children was their great-great-grandfather, and they were trying to follow that up. And so you're right. People just come out of nowhere and say, did you know the Lennons of Chicago? Did you know the Lennons of...
Right.
And somewhere along the line, we're all related, even to John Lennon back in England.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Inevitably. Well, with all the, you kind of being a hub of the family history on your family, do you have a favorite family story, something that's kind of popped up and caught your attention?
Well, I'll tell you what was always fun and kind of a tradition in our family was when we had our big family Christmas reunion party. We have it every year, and this is in Los Angeles, and some place. We started in everyone's homes, and then we got so huge that we had to get, a church hall or, a meeting room, because we just couldn't fit it into people's homes because there were so many of us. And what would happen, what was so beautiful, is every time we'd all, open the evening, everybody'd visit, and everybody'd bring food. We never had it catered or anything. Everybody brought, we would assign who brought what. Big potluck. And then we'd open with Silent Night, and then everybody'd sit down, and then the oldest of the family, which was usually our Uncle Jack, and he was the oldest of all the Lennon brothers, which would be Michael and Mark's dad, Ted, and Kip and Pat's dad, and our dad, the 11 of us, was Bill, and there were 8 boys and a girl in the family that were our immediate uncles and aunt. And Uncle Jack was the oldest, and he was in the diplomatic service, worked for the government, and he would always stand up and kind of take over. He was like the papa.
Right.
And he would begin telling stories and following down, just like, you know, many, many years ago when people would just tell their stories. Nobody wrote it down, or you didn't have, you know, everybody told the next fable or whatever. And Uncle Jack would tell stories of growing up and what it was like and being raised with that many children and through the Depression, and then how their dad died, and how Grandma, how she raised them, all these boys, and those that had to quit school early in order to get jobs through the Depression. And I got to say, when I think of family history and family stories, that was one of my favorite things we used to do every year. And then when Uncle Jack died, Uncle Jimmy stood up, and he was the next in line, and he would tell stories, again, the same ones, because what we would have is the next generation of children would be there.
Right.
And they'd want to hear it, and they would be able to tell a story. And then those that had been there for years would put up our hand and tell them the story about, you know, the fireworks at the beach, and tell them the story when you all, you know, cut off the top of the car to have a convertible. Tell the story, and we would have him tell all these family stories, and then from there it would be, you know, Uncle Tom and Aunt Mary, and we had the traditional songs that everybody sang, you know, like "Oh Holy Night," and certain ones would take the solos in that part, and those are my favorite memories of families, because of that tradition, which I enjoyed so much. And then we also had on our grandmother's side, our dad's mom came from Germany. She was a prima ballerina.
Kit mentioned something about that.
Right, and she was only 16 years old when she came over with a ballerina gypsy troupe. And she, her name was Betty Heinrich, or Barbara Heinrich, and she came in over as Babette. We have pictures and everything, beautiful costumes, and she came over on the ship, and our Grandpa Bert Lennon, who was our grandfather, all of our grandfather, Venice's grandfather, our grandfather Bert Lennon was a writer, publisher, editor for the Pioneer Press in St. Paul and the Chicago Tribune, and he worked for those different newspapers through his life. And he interviewed her when she came over, and he did a publicity story on her, and then she came over the second time, and he asked her to marry him.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
She was young, and she didn't know much English. The story Uncle Jack would always tell, and she didn't know much English, but she could say yeah. And,
that's all you need for a marriage proposal.
That's right. And Uncle Jack always says, and we were really happy she said yeah. And she and Grandpa Bert got married in Chicago, and then moved, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then they moved to Chicago for a year where our dad was born, and then they moved to Venice, California. And that's when Grandpa Bert Lennon worked for the Thomas H. Ince Studios, which later was bought out by MGM.
Right.
And he was publicity, marketing, and he was very well known as Pinky Lennon, was his nickname, because he was a redhead.
Oh, okay.
And you can look him up and there's some stories, you know, that he has some things on the internet that we have found through the years. And so he worked for MGM, and we have been told through family history, again, it's Uncle Jack and Uncle Jim, and that he is the one that coined the phrase for MGM, more stars than in heaven.
Really?
And that's their MGM, more stars more stars than heaven, I think. MGM has more stars than heaven. I'm almost 100% sure that's how it goes. But, and that he coined that phrase. And which is, you know, kind of like exciting for us.
Oh, yeah.
And we have I have his stationery and things that he would, you know, jot down and write little things from Pinky Lennon off to so-and-so. And so when they came to California, that's where he started working, and that's how he, got a job, and he started raising his children, and then he died very young.
And Ince Studios was silent films at that point, right?
Thomas H. Ince Studios, and it's in Culver City, California.
So that's what brought him out to the West Coast.
And that's what brought him to the West Coast.
Isn't she terrific? I loved talking with Kathy, and you're going to want to tune into our next episode where we continue on to talk about the Lennon Sisters' career, which is an amazing story into itself, and her wonderful mother, Isabel, as well as a new venture that's kind of family history inspired that Kathy has gone into with her sister Janet. It's called Best Pals, and it's a line of wonderful reproduction dolls. These dolls were actually fashioned exactly after two dolls that Kathy and Janet's mom and grandmother made for them when they were little girls. One of them was to look like Kathy, and the other one was Janet. And Kathy and Janet have turned it into an entire line of wonderful toys that really call back to a previous generation. And in fact, we are going to have, as I promised you, a terrific contest where you'll have a chance to win a Kathy and a Janet Best Pals doll. Every child has a best pal. Maybe it was a neighborhood friend, perhaps a brother or a sister, like Kathy Lennon's best pal, her sister Janet. Or perhaps your best pal was a toy that you wouldn't be caught without. Something made with love for you, like Kathy's mother and grandmother made for her. A toy that was worthy of being loved until it was thread-worn. Reminds me a lot of the Velveteen Rabbit story. Well, Genealogy Gems premium members are invited to come share your stories of childhood best pals. Your own story, or perhaps one about an ancestor, and you'll be entered in our Best Pals contest for a chance to win a beautiful pair of Best Pals dolls, each with their own signed certificate of authenticity by Kathy and Janet and delivered in a Best Pals tote bag. It's an over $60 value, and you can enter as many stories as you wish. The winner will be contacted by email on July 31st, 2008, and announced on a following Genealogy Gems podcast episode. I think it's going to be podcast episode number 50. And I've got the dolls right here with me. Oh my gosh, they are so absolutely adorable. They are soft rag dolls, exact replicas of the original dolls that were created for Kathy and Janet by their maternal grandmother, they knew as Nana, and their mom, Sis Lennon. And I think Kathy was 6 years old when they got them, and Janet was 3. And they must have been just thrilled to receive these dolls. I know that I would be too. And I got to say, I love these Best Pals dolls because they really represent a return to simpler times and really wholesome values. Kathy says they were designed to reinforce the importance of creative play and family togetherness and the wonderful comfort for a child of having a trusted friend. Now, here's the Kathy doll. And you can see a photo of the dolls in the show notes for this episode number 48. She's a brunette, and she's got a really sweet little yellow dress on with tiny Humpty Dumptys all over it and matching pink silk bows in her hair. And the Janet doll, of course, is blonde, and she's wearing a pale yellow dress with a sort of a nostalgic pink and blue bunny print and matching blue silk bows in her hair. Oh my gosh, you guys are going to love these. So go to the show notes. You'll get more information on how to become a premium member, how to enter the contest. You can see the dolls. You can even see a photograph of Kathy and Janet when they were little girls with their original Best Pals dolls. Well, we've come to the close of episode 48 of the Genealogy Gems podcast. I want to thank Paula Sassi for another fascinating and insightful look into the handwriting of our ancestors. And thank you to Kathy Lennon. Be sure and tune into episode 49 for part 2 of our conversation. And of course, you'll want to visit the show notes for this episode. Go to the website at genealogygems.tv and follow the links to episode 48. I have lots of links, photographs, and extra goodies there for you, so you'll want to check that out. And as I mentioned, premium members will want to head to the members forum and start writing about the best pals in your lives for a chance to win those precious dolls. Now, before we go, I want to let those of you subscribed to the free Genealogy Gems podcast newsletter know that you will soon see a new, colorful version of the newsletter. I'm so happy to finally get the newsletter updated, and I hope you enjoy the photos and the much easier to read format. So if you'd like to receive the free, new and improved email newsletter, drop me a line at genealogygemsnewsletter@gmail.com with your name, state, and how you first heard about the podcast. Or head to the website at genealogygems.tv and click the newsletter link. And very soon, you will be able to sign up right on the website without having to send a separate email. Oh, I love all these newfangled things on the internet. So I hope you enjoy this much more visually creative version of the newsletter. Well, that's it for now. Keep those emails coming with your comments and stories and questions to genealogygemspodcast@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for joining me, friend. I'll talk to you soon.